On this week's episode, can Taika Waititi reignite the love for Star Wars films? Tom Cruise wants to go into orbit, and are you ready to join the Space Force? All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse.
Don't be alarmed. The quasi-shimmering light before you is a trans-dimensional gateway to other worlds, other voices, other thoughts, and other realities. Up feels like down, and down feels like the number 7 on a Wednesday morning. Don't worry. That quivering, blood-boiling sensation under your eyebrows is all a part of the charm. Welcome to the PCC Multiverse.
And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source and Inside Sports Fantasy Football and, of course, the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without my good friend. He's our own astronaut for Pop Culture Cosmos. In fact, that's probably when you see our logo, that's actually the astronaut. It's Josh. It's Josh. You got to check out what he's doing today at popculturecosmos.com. Also, his great book, Congratulations, You Suck. And, of course, his awesome podcast, Topicocalypse. It is my good friend with better internet, Josh Peterson. What's up, man?
What's up? I feel like I'm not delayed anymore. Like I can actually sit here and have a conversation. You don't have to go ask me a question, then I'll answer, and there's a 30-second gap right there. This feels good.
It was getting pretty bad. I'll say that. I mean, when I was going back and editing and I was seeing like that big old wide space was getting wider and wider and wider at the amount of time, the gaps. But you know what? Glad you got it fixed. Just happy to hear you once again. Just ready for a great show. You know what? Let's go into space this episode because we're going to be dealing with a lot of space issues coming up here on the program. We're going to be talking about Taika Waititi and his new Star Wars opportunity. Plus, also want to delve more into the Mandalorian a little bit. When this line of big-name directors, I want to ask a question. Why isn't Star Wars getting those directors involved more with new Star Wars projects into the movie area? So we're going to talk about those type of things coming up here in a sec. Plus, also as well, Cyberpunk 2077 is courting a little bit of controversy coming up. It got a little bit of sneak peeks as far as behind the scenes to what going on in regards to what you can do in the game. So a little bit of controversy that could be around the corner for Cyberpunk 2077. Speaking of space, Tom Cruise wants to film in space. So we'll talk about that actual concept and ask the question that's out there. Is Tom Cruise actually nuts? Or is he just thinking about doing something outside of the box that could really be a hit for him coming up? We'll talk about Space Force. Of course, we don't want to join the Space Force, but we might want to watch the Space Force, and that's coming out later this month on Netflix, so we'll talk about that as well. And a good friend of the show, Troy Brewer from the Discover Community Network, he asked us a question recently on Facebook about Disney Plus and the possibility of Disney Plus changing its format to accommodate this new streaming way of life that we now have. I'm going to pose Josh with that question about a new price structure that he proposed and see if it's something realistic going forward. But first, my friend, it is Taika Waititi. He was just announced on May the 4th, among all these other great things that were announced, including new DLC for Star Wars Fallen Order that's coming up. Also, EA confirming that Star Wars Fallen Order is going to get some sequels, which is some great news for that game. But the biggest news of the day on May the 4th was that Taika Waititi was announced to develop a new Star Wars film for the Star Wars movie franchise, which I know just would bring joy to Josh. I think he was probably very happy when he heard the news. I know I was, and I know a lot of other people were as well. He's already had his hand in directing a little bit into the Star Wars universe as far as The Mandalorian is concerned. He directed an episode. But Josh, I ask you this. With Star Wars movies now at I don't want to say at an all-time low, but it is at or near what you could say is an all-time low after the disappointing returns of Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. I want to ask you a question on this. Taika Waititi, could he be the answer to turn around the fortunes and bring the Star Wars movie universe back into the place where it should be?
I don't know if I'd go that far. I would say that he is capable of making a good Star Wars film, albeit a maybe one that's not as serious, not as dark toned as the newer trilogy tried to be. You know, he has talent. He is a good choice for that role because look at what he did with Thor, right? Thor was a Marvel superhero that was kind of fading. People didn't really like it that much, and he brought it in and he turned Thor into a hit. He completely revitalized who Thor was. So if anybody could do it, if anyone could revitalize Star Wars, I think that he could do it. But I also am curious, like, what kind of tone he's going to go for, because he's known for making comedies. He's known for making things that have, like, you know, they do have good stories to them, but they're funny. And is that really the right mood for Star Wars?
I think it's a good direction. I think it's a good choice. I think he is a hot director right now in Hollywood, obviously coming off an Academy Award win for Best Original Screenplay. He's done a lot of great things so far, like you said, Thor, Love and Thunder, also what he's done before previously with Thor Ragnarok. You've seen Jojo Rabbit get a lot of acclaim and get a lot of notoriety. A lot of his success, What We Do in the Shadows, a lot of things he's done has been very successful. I'd say it's a better fit right now than what a lot of other individuals right now that have tried to have their hand in extending this movie universe. I would say give him a shot. We'd love to see what he's all about as far as what he's been doing lately in movies and his involvement. People seem to get excited about what he's been doing. I think it could be the shot in the arm that the Star Wars film franchise needs. I mean, I don't see many other directors at this point in time that's going to really breathe some life into it. J.J. Abrams, we were all excited for that. And after Star Wars The Force Awakens, I mean, he couldn't retcon the retcon known as The Last Jedi enough to go ahead and make that a true success. I mean, yes, it did make money, but when you're down over $1 billion over The Force Awakens, you cannot tell me the Star Wars movie universe is going in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting how that happened. Like, I wonder if J.J. Abrams would have had his hand on the entire new trilogy, if we would have seen a completely different beast, and maybe Star Wars would be considered a lot better than it is, you know, it is right now. I think Taika Waititi, I mean, it depends. I mean, is he going, I want to know what the story is, what he's working on. Is it going to be a trilogy? Is it going to be a standalone? Because I feel like if he's making something like Solo, like something in that vein, like it'll be good. I'm sure. I'm positive it'll be good. It'll be funny. Like Solo was, I know it's kind of looked down on by people, but I think it was it was an entertaining film. So if he's doing something like that, yeah, definitely he's the man. But like I don't know Taika Waititi to do extended stories. So if he's, you know, if they're looking at him to be the next, the leader of the next trilogy, I don't know if that's such a great move because he doesn't have experience in that kind of thing.
Well, there's not many people that do that are really active within the Star Wars universe. I mean, you could look towards George Lucas, but I don't think he'll want to do it. I mean, you could look towards some of the older, more experienced directors that are out there, like Steven Spielberg and maybe a couple others. I mean, with J.J. Abrams going into it, he was more on the television side before he really got into Star Wars. I mean, yes, he had done the Star Trek movies, the first two rebooted films, but even he had more experience in other areas and other facets before he jumped into the Star Wars universe. But you're right. I think things would have looked a little bit different as far as the Rise of Skywalker if he'd given a chance to go ahead and direct The Last Jedi. But again, that's something that you can't go back in time. You can only play armchair quarterback for so long on that. But again, it's like I said, it's diminishing returns over a loss of $1 billion from 2015 to 2019. So that's, to me, something of great concern that Disney needs to turn around the people's love for Star Wars at this point in time, because Star Wars is an entity right now that is not as high as it once was. And that's a shame because, as you and I have talked about before, it's going to be something that on its current trajectory is going to be something that fans that are 10, 20 years younger, they're not going to be as fond of the Star Wars universe. They're going to stop buying merchandise. They're going to stop going to movies because of the fact that these recent films just have not cut the mustard. And before that, the prequels weren't even good as well. So you've got these newer fans or newer moviegoers that are not as interested to see this product. And unless you have something to inject new life into the Star Wars movie franchise, like a Taika Waititi, that people can get excited over, I'm worried about the direction and the future of the Star Wars movie franchise.
Well, here's my opinion. I definitely think I'm excited to see what Taika Waititi does, but I would also be excited to see. I think Disney needs to put less the producers need to have less say or less control. They can have a say, but they need to have less control over Star Wars while it's filming. They need, if they have all this young, we're going to talk about this in a minute, all the young talent they brought in for the Mandalorian, but I almost feel like people are afraid to direct something like Star Wars. They're afraid to direct it because every shot needs to sell a toy. Every character on there needs to feel some kind of stereotype. Like there's so much pressure from the producers that I feel like a lot of high caliber directors wouldn't even want to go near this franchise. J.J. Abrams I admire, but he's worked with that under those kind of settings before, like with Star Trek. But with with Star Wars, if I were a young director, like I wouldn't want to go anywhere near it just because it has so much pressure from the producer's side to do certain things, and there's not really a lot of creative freedom. You're really just directing a script that someone gave you, and then you have the producers breathing down your neck about your angles and your shots and things like that, and that's just not something that I'd want to do. So I'm curious how much creative freedom they're truly going to be giving Taika Waititi.
And you've seen that in the past in this recent batch of Star Wars films where, like you said, they weren't given as much freedom. Maybe JJ, to an extent, because he has that name power and clout, he might have been given more freedom and access to do some more things within the Star Wars universe. But you saw, well, actually, I want to say this. I mean, look what happened with The Last Jedi when Rian Johnson, he was given a lot of creative freedom and access to go ahead and do what he wanted and play in that Star Wars sandbox. And he made a lot of changes that a lot of people are upset over. But and conversely, you saw with Rogue One, the first director, he left over creative differences. So it seems seemingly it's working two different ways when it comes to the current Star Wars universe.
Yeah, that's true. And that always confused me too. Like why they let Rian Johnson, he made indie films. Like Looper was something he did, but like he is primarily known for indie films, and let him have so much freedom with that film. And then you have these two directors who have made a few popular films, and they wouldn't let them have the freedom they needed for the film. So it's just, it doesn't make sense to me. How do they pick and choose? What is their process? It seems like at the end of the day, if Kathleen Kennedy disagrees with anything you're doing, you're not going to get what you want out of directing a Star Wars film. I mean, I was even reading that whole thing with Josh Trank right after Fantastic Four. He was saying that, he finally came out and said what was going on with that film and how that affected him directing a Star Wars film. And they were saying that the reason that he had a mental breakdown on set was because the producers were sitting there, like they would shoot scenes before he got to the set, and he was either, go along with what they were doing or get fired. And I guess like he gave enough back talk to where it reached Kathleen Kennedy, or the movie was so bad it reached Kathleen Kennedy, and she just decided that she didn't want him to direct anymore. So it sounds like she's when it comes to Star Wars, like she's very, very involved, almost over involved. And if you're not pleasing her, if your ideas don't please her, then your job is on the line constantly.
You're listening to the Pop Culture Cosmos. Don't touch that dial. Wait, do people still use dials?
For the latest news and information, analysis and opinions on the Los Angeles Lakers and the NBA, check out the Lakers Fast Break podcast today on wherever you get your podcasts. Well, that leads me into what we're going to be talking about when it comes to The Mandalorian, which has seen a great bit of success on Disney Plus. And that, to me, part of the reason why is because of the influx of directors that actually are part of it. I mean, we have different directors almost every time out in almost every episode. and at least through season 1, and season 2 looks to be getting even better because like we did in season 1, we had great directors working there as Bryce Dallas Howard. Also as well, you had, of course, Taika Waititi, which is really getting his feet wet when it comes to the Star Wars universe. This upcoming season, you're going to have Robert Rodriguez, Peyton Reed, John Landau, who oversees the whole project. You have all these great directors that are a part of it. Why not incorporate some of them into extending the Star Wars universe? It's seemingly they can attract, as far as the Mandalorian, all these great directors to come in there and have a hand in the Star Wars universe. Why not have them stay to go ahead like they're doing now with Taika Waititi and be able to go ahead and create more interesting features of the Star Wars universe? You have Kevin Feige also going ahead and maybe possibly even having a hand in it as well as from a producing standpoint. You're talking about all these great things. You have a chance and opportunity to get all these great directors. But outside of Taika Waititi, I don't know what exactly they're doing to go ahead and extend the Star Wars movie universe even more.
Yeah, well, they're certainly not making it very appetizing for young talent, and maybe Mandalorian some kind of tryout for doing something bigger. But again, like a lot of these directors who have directed Mandalorian, they are so well established that they shouldn't need to try out for anything. It surprises me that they would give someone like Rian Johnson an opportunity before giving someone like Robert Rodriguez, or, even the episode Bryce Dallas Howard did was really good. And that surprises me that she hasn't been approached about something, because Kathleen Kennedy is like, she's big into the injecting feminism into the Star Wars universe. There's been a whole lot of news articles reporting on that. And it would seem like it would be a good fit to have somebody, or even Patty Jenkins, come in and direct a Star Wars film. But the whole process confuses me. Like, I don't know. I don't even know what to think, how this works, who decides what. It's a lot of moving pieces that don't make sense. And because of that, I think a lot of people sense, the lack of organization and the chaos behind the scenes. Even having the actors from the latest trilogy come out and say, there is a lot of chaos. Star Wars felt like a machine, yada, yada. Like, it is apparent, and if they don't get their act together, much like DC, they're going to have issues going forward. So it really, Taika Waititi's got a big job on his shoulders. He's really like, they're at the bottom of the ladder. Star Wars can only go up from here. And I feel like he's the right man to do it, but it's still a lot of pressure for him.
Well, from a TV standpoint, especially with the most recent episodes of Star Wars, The Clone Wars, this season has been its finest from all accounts. Everybody seems to be in love with the way it ended. That series seems to be something that a lot of people have really enjoyed on Disney Plus, especially this last season. Episode after episode in that last season really got high acclaim. And the Mandalorian, everybody's going gaga over Baby Yoda, and it's something that a lot of people are now interested in seeing, and they can't wait for season 2. So they're getting something done right when it comes to the TV and the smaller screen. But when it comes to the larger screen, it just seems to be going in a bad direction at this point in time. You're seeing declining returns. You're seeing a lot of issues there going forward. So I'm concerned overall about the future of the Star Wars cinematic universe when it comes to what's going on there. But I have some hope now, and hope always is the key word when it comes to Star Wars, that Taika Waititi can take it back into a place where we all know and love for the Star Wars movie franchise. What are your thoughts on Taika Waititi directing one of the next films in the Star Wars movie universe? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, before we go ahead and break on this half hour, I wanted to go ahead and ask you something about Cyberpunk 2077. It's not out yet. It's coming out later this year as we talk about it. But I wanted to ask you this. Cyberpunk 2077 recently got a look at by the Australian Ratings Board, and they mentioned some things that are going to court some controversy in some certain groups, as many video games do that want to push the envelope, that want to push the M rating and all that. Two of the things that were mentioned are a possible crucifixion, and also as well the ability to go ahead and customize your downstairs, for lack of a better term, on your person. And I won't go into any more detail than that. Just to say you can just go ahead and customize and change the way something down there looks like there for either man or woman. So I ask you, my friend, these are two of the things that are going to create some controversy because it is going to be a high-profile game. It's going to be something that's going to be a lot of commercials, a lot of ads for, a lot of sales, a lot of interest. It's from the same company that made The Witcher 3, which was a huge and massive hit. So I ask you, I mean, this is something on the horizon now that you and I are both going to be talking about probably coming, like I said, 3-4 months from now. What do you say right now in the sense that Cyberpunk 2077, the fact that it might be going in the direction of courting controversy? We all know controversy sells, but could it be too much?
They are a game, it seems like, that have thrived on controversy since the beginning. As far as like customizing your special parts, like I don't know like what that entails. Is it something as simple as like Conan where you can size it up, or is it like tattoos and stuff? But like it just seems like games these days do a lot of very unnecessary things. Like, what's the point? If you're coming out the gate here and you want to sell a lot of copies, I guess having controversy like that is a good way to do it. But at the same time, it feels so unnecessary because when you get into the game, those little aspects are going to matter very little unless you walk naked the whole game.
And that's the thing, my friend, because if it was a smaller game studio, or if it's a smaller game, like an independent game or a game, maybe you don't want to go ahead and get that notoriety just for that reason, for shock and awe, I can understand that because we see that all the time headed to Steam or they head to certain platforms. In fact, I got an email earlier today from a PR company trying to push a couple of adult-rated games on me to go ahead and try. And I'm like, nah, I think I'm good. But I'm just saying that we see this every now and then from the AAA games. The GTA series, let's go there. The GTA series loves to court that controversy, and it works for them, obviously, because GTA 5 has sold over 100 million copies. So I guess we shouldn't be arguing about it too much because of what's going to be on the horizon. You and I are both going to hear from conservative, from PTA groups, from teacher groups, from parent groups. They're going to be talking about this game because, as you and I both know, it's going to come out with an M rating. But it's also going to have a lot of parents and grandparents buying, and aunts and uncles buying these kids these games that are not aware of what's going on inside the box, which you and I see every time a GTA comes out, which you and I see every time an M-rated game comes out, that people that are not aware of what's in the game, they still buying these kids these games, and then they go from there. And it just, to me, that's the worst part about it. I mean, you and I are going to probably buy Cyberpunk 2077 and probably enjoy the heck out of Cyberpunk 2077 because we're adults and we're able to go ahead and play it and have that choice, and we understand. But to the 12-year-olds and the 14-year-olds and the 10-year-olds that are probably going to be playing Cyberpunk 2077 by the end of this year because they're going to slip a fast one on their parents or their grandparents by getting it, that to me is disturbing. And that's not necessarily on the game company itself, but it's more on the parents who allow them to play that game.
Yeah, I totally get it from that side, and you're giving a new generation of gamers a hard time getting out the gate, so to speak. But it's I don't know. Like, I feel like when I was a kid and my parents would buy me games, they did massive amounts of research on these games before they let me play them. I remember getting Halo, and my mom bought that, and she was okay with it. And then but before she let me play it by myself, her and my dad wanted to sit down and play it with me. And so we went around, played we played Blood Gulch. We did a multiplayer thing, and they were they were fine with it. But most parents I know do kind of what my parents did. They do research, but you have these parents that don't, and then they walk in and find a character naked or find a sex scene like in Assassin's Creed 2 that is pretty graphic, and you end up with this, oh, well, if this is what games are, then maybe we don't want you playing these. And that's kind of, I can see where that would cause some problems. It's like, it's a video game. It's supposed to be an escape, but that escape should have its limits. Just much in the vein that movies aren't allowed to do certain things that step outside the rating system. I think that games, there should be, I don't want to say monitoring, I don't want to say like blocking things, but they should be held accountable for things.
But then it should not allow us to not be able to have access to those games, because like I said, you and I are going to see the possible crucifixion and the customizable down there. It's something that's just kind of a distraction, small distraction, and allow me to get into the game. Because I want to play the game. I want to understand the narrative. I want to be able to go ahead and check out everything that is coming up for this game, because it is going to be one of the premier releases of the year. And it's something I'm excited to go ahead and play and delve into that world, because as everyone out there knows, you and I have a great affinity for this type of cyberpunk modeling, similar to what we see in Blade Runner and that type of motif. It's always been appealing to us. So that's why I'm saying it's something that we want to get into. For us, the other controversial stuff is just something we're just going to go ahead, okay, that's fine, whatever, and move on. But for others, they're just going to hold on tight to it, and they're just going to hold on to the fact that that's the entire game when it's not. Now, mind you, there's going to be some graphic violence and things of that nature that M-rated games bring as well. And coming from the makers of the Witcher series, that's something that they're not afraid of doing. But for us, it's something that we should not be allowed to go ahead and be detracted from us playing an M-rated game as adults. But it's just up to the parents that worries me, that don't check on what their kids are doing and are allowing their kids to go ahead and play some of these games before they're ready.
Yeah, and it's also, kids are attracted to things that they're not supposed to do, not supposed to play, not supposed to watch. Like, you look at, we talked about this before, right, with The Hangover. Like, I thought The Hangover was funny, but then I stopped thinking it was funny because there are kids all over the place quoting it, kids who are like 9 or 10 years old. And that was, kids are attracted to that kind of thing. And so,
you and I were at that age.
Yeah, same. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, I remember when Mortal Kombat came out, like when I was in elementary school, I think I was in the 3rd grade when that, not the first one, but when one of the Mortal Kombat games came out, and all my friends were going to each other's houses to play these games. And then there's like this coalition of angry moms that would be like, oh, we can't let our kids play Mortal Kombat or watch or read Harry Potter or whatever it is. Like,
it went to state legislatures. That's how bad it got.
Yeah, exactly. And kids are always going to be attracted to things that they can't do. And they're always going to be attracted to the most gruesome and inappropriate aspects of that thing. So, I mean, if you're able to walk around naked or like put tattoos on your junk in this game, like, it is something that they know is going to cause problems. And it's something that kids are going to be talking about. They're just going to be stuck on the fact that you can do this kind of thing, and that could possibly prevent sales. I don't know. Like, I know it's an adult game, so, but it's honestly like, there's, you know, I look at something like God of War, right? It's an adult game, but it's got such a great story, and it's got such great like puzzle solving and things like that. Like, I feel like if there were a way to remove all the gore from it, like, it would be a really great game for, you know, a 13-year-old, but it's just that it doesn't work like that, you know?
No, because unfortunately many aspects of the violence and some of the other stuff that's contained within this M-rated game, or that I'm pretty sure is going to be contained within this M-rated game, is what sells to many gamers out there. For us, it's all about the action and the narrative and things of that nature, how good it is and what we want to see out of it. So for us, we liked Witcher 3 so much because it told such a great narrative and the action and the adventure. And that's what really got me into it. Not necessarily how realistic was the violence, how graphic was the violence, or anything like that. To me, it was just all about how the narrative and how challenging the adventure was as far as Witcher 3. And that's what I'm hoping for, because there's a track record that's been built. That's what I'm hoping for with Cyberpunk 2077. So we'll have to wait and see what's going on with that title as it comes out, I think in September, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm looking forward to the game, but I'm not looking forward to the controversy that I'm pretty sure is going to be following it as well. What are your thoughts out there on Cyberpunk 2077 and the controversy that's already started with last year with the transgender issues, and now this year with the rumors that it's going to include possible crucifixion and also some designer down there. Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about Disney Plus, a different concept and idea that was thrown at us. We also might be thinking about joining the Space Force, and Tom Cruise wants to go into space to film a movie. We'll talk about that and more coming up after the break. This is the PCC Multiverse.
Video game box art, the stories behind the covers, in which we talk to the illustrators and artists who are responsible for gaming's most iconic images. Don't forget to check out Video Game Box Art, the stories behind the covers, celebrating gaming's most iconic images from the people who created them. This and many more from Rob McCallum Films.
We're back here on the PCC Multiverse. Cannot thank everyone enough for listening. If you have any questions for us here on the show, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Plus, also as well, check out all the great stuff that Josh is doing, including getting his book, Congratulations, You Suck, now available on Amazon and also Barnes & Noble. And, of course, you can check out his awesome podcast, Topic Ocalypse, at any time you want right there on any available podcast outlet. But, my friend, Tom Cruise wants to go into space to film a movie. He made those recent comments earlier this week that got people going, okay, what isn't Tom Cruise going to do? Because Tom Cruise can seemingly do anything. Your thoughts on Tom Cruise possibly going into space to film a movie or maybe a sequence or a scene or something like that. Your thoughts on Tom Cruise going into space?
Of course he would. You know what I'm thinking about, though, instead of like him filming in space, is the fact that this is going to spark all kinds of new, flat Earth, round Earth, new controversy. Is space real? What's going on? Is the government causing conspiracies? We're going to see so many videos surfacing about that kind of thing if and when this goes down. But I don't think it's a bad idea. You're kind of limited on what you can do in space. I don't imagine special effects are going to be easy to do in space. I don't imagine, they're going to be able to set up big green screen studios in space. I don't imagine, right? They're going to have some guy floating in the background and Tom Cruise is going to accidentally float off the screen. I don't see, it sounds like a cool idea, but what's the point? What's the purpose of all of this? How is filming equipment going to respond in zero gravity? There's too many variables. I don't think it's something you just say, I want to do this, so we're going to go do this. I don't think it works like that.
They say the brain swells with extended time in space. I wonder if that accounts for any ego as well.
Well, Tom Cruise's brain is already pretty swelled, so I don't know if someone like him can survive space. Me, I'm happy, I'm content just imagining what Fast and the Furious is going to do when they finally go to space. So I don't really need to see someone actually be there. I would rather see Vin Diesel fly a 1969 Dodge Charger from one space station to the next. That's what I'm excited for.
Not in Fast and Furious 9, but I'm betting you, my friend. I'm going to bet you money Fast and Furious 10.
That's ironic too, right? Because that's the same, 10 is the same movie when Jason went to space.
That could be a very real possibility. If they go into space, that's probably why they do it. Hey, Jason got to go into space. Why don't we? I don't know. It seems sort of crazy to me that he wants to go ahead and do that. Also seems not very cost effective at all. Seems very cost prohibitive, to be quite honest with you. You're going to spend a lot of money getting Tom Cruise into space to film for how long, for what type of sequence. Is it going to be an entire movie? Is it just going to be a scene? What can you really do within the confines of space? We haven't seen before that's been made on the ground. I'm not sure it's exactly the wisest idea. I think if a studio does it and a studio allows it and gets him up there into space, I think it's more for taking care of Tom Cruise than it is just doing it for the advancement of film. We've already seen movies, documentaries. We've already seen video and film of people in space stations, of people orbiting the Earth and things of that nature. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And, you know, if given a different lifetime, maybe I would have liked to enjoyed going into space. But going out there and spending the tens of millions of dollars it will probably take to get Tom Cruise into space and to actually have him film something with a director, with a crew, you know, that to me just seems, I don't want to say absurd or ridiculous, because absurd and ridiculous seem to be the theme of the day going on in 2020, but it just seems to be a little bit outlandish and unnecessary. And I'm not sure if I really want it to come to fruition. I'm sure it will, but I'm not sure I want to.
Yeah, it's not something I'm like dying to see either. It's not. It's just it's news headlines. It's publicity. It's an attempt, I'm sure, to make NASA relevant again. And you know, I'm not against that. I mean, I would love to see a 2021 space race, but I mean, there are other things in the world that I feel like are more worth our concern at this moment in time.
So what are your thoughts out there on Tom Cruise going into space? Are you with it? Are you against it? Are you for it? Are you not for it? You don't really care? We want to hear your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, speaking of space, a trailer came out this week for Space Force that's heading to Netflix later this month as kind of a farce, as kind of a comedy from a lot of the folks that developed The Office. Is something that I think a lot of people are looking forward to as new content coming to Netflix. So I know that's very exciting. And as an inside joke to whatever's been announced and whatever's being developed by us as a country. So I want to hear your thoughts on Space Force. I think it's looking pretty funny. I think it's a nice little tongue-in-cheek commentary and just a little inside joke. And people should not get up in arms about it. Just take it as it is, as some light comedy fare going on in the middle of a pandemic. And it was Steve Carell behind the wheel as the star of it. I really think it's something that could be okay. I'm not expecting anything outrageous or the funniest show on television, mind you, but I am looking into it as something that could be an entertaining watch for Netflix.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I feel like it's going to be, I don't know how many seasons they'd be able to stretch an idea like that on for. I feel like it'll be like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like it's going to be really funny coming out the gate, and then it'll be funny for a couple more seasons, and then it might just kind of fizzle out. And whether or not they choose to do the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia route and just keep making more and more and more, that's unclear right now. But you know, there are worse things that Trump has done and said that have been made fun of in other forms of media than the Space Force. So I mean, the show looks like it could be funny. I'm not expecting a lot from it. I'll probably tune in to a few episodes just to see what it's all about. But I mean, you know, as far as people getting all upset about it, you know, the Saturday Night Live has pushed the envelope way further than what this is.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think people should get up in arms about it. Whether the question is Space Force relevant, I'm sure that's for political shows that can do that. And you know, you can go ahead and decide on your own if an actual Space Force is going to be relevant or not. And you can ask that question yourself if you want to, or listen to it on all these political shows that are going left and right and back and forth on that. But for us, it's all about entertainment. And later this month, when Space Force premieres, it's something I'm going to probably give a chance to. I think because Steve Carell has earned it. And it's kind of weird, though, with Steve Carell wanting to work with some of the producers from The Office on this project. But yet he's been very hesitant on a rebirth or a reigniting of The Office, even though many of The Office stars, including John Krasinski, if I'm not mistaken, has said that they would be okay with going ahead and doing a limited series run of that. So I want to hear your thoughts on Steve Carell, why he would want to be hesitant on it. Do you think his character, Michael Scott, has been all played out on the show and just doesn't want to do it anymore? I think there's still life left in The Office, especially because it is one of the most popular shows on streaming today.
You know, sadly, I've spent a decent amount of time thinking about this.
Sad, like that, sadly.
Well, because I've been curious about that too. And this is what I've come up with. I think that it's because he doesn't want to. Well, he had a great time on The Office, and he's said that in many interviews. He doesn't want to be associated as Steve Carell from The Office. Like, he wants to be Steve Carell from something else. He wants to be known for something else. John Krasinski now is known for A Quiet Place. I don't know what most of the other people
Steve
are known
Carell's
for.
appeared in a lot of movies, though. I mean, he starred a lot of hit films. He
has, but if you go up to any like charlatan on the street, right, and show him a picture of Steve Carell, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, the guy from The Office. Like, that's what he is known for now. You know, even like watching, we watched the way back, this movie with Sam Rockwell and a couple other people who I don't remember their names, but he's played like this really, like, he's kind of a jerk boyfriend of this mom. They go to this beach house for the summer, and he plays this character, and like, it was really hard for me to watch. It's just him reaching to a different tone for his acting, but it's really hard to watch because I am so used to seeing him play that lighthearted tone in The Office. And so it's hard after watching The Office for so many seasons to see him playing in other things that don't require him to be funny in some way.
He was really good at Foxcatcher. I really thought he should have earned even more acclaim than he did for that role. I mean, that was creepy and scary, and that was as far away from him as far as his past. The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which I think is also one of his finest performances and one of the funniest movies that have ever been made. And, you know, a movie that's within my top 10 of my favorite movies. I loved him in that role. But Foxcatcher, if people want to see a different side of him and his acting ability and his skill, you need to look no further than Foxcatcher, because that was really something that he earned a lot of acclaim for. I wish he would have gotten an Academy Award for it. But yes, it still was a very, very, very good movie for him.
Well, what was those? There were a couple other movies, Dan in Real Life, and what was the one he did with Ryan Gosling? Crazy Stupid Love was what it's called. Like,
that was good.
Those were pretty different. I mean, they were Steve Carell, like it was Steve Carell, but I mean, he did experiment. Like they were movies that showed two different spectrums of Steve Carell, as opposed to the funny Steve Carell that just kind of sits in the middle and teeters back and forth.
Yeah, I just think he's a very skilled actor. And that leads me into another question. I mean, you see him as a comedic actor, and you see all these other comedic actors, like most recently Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. When they step outside of their box, they do a great job for the most part. Awkwafina did an awesome job in The Farewell. That was my favorite performance of last year. And when they step outside the box, they're able to, on many occasions, really go above and beyond and get really high acclaim for it. Your thoughts on when these comedians step out and really go outside the box to do something dramatic? For the most part, it seems to pay off.
Well, so Adam Sandler's that's a very good example. So remember
Jim
when
Carrey, he's done a lot of serious stuff.
Jim Carrey, yeah. Well, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is like a cult classic among
the Truman Show.
The Truman Show. But, you know, Adam Sandler's a good case too. Right? He only did comedies back in the early 90s, late 90s, and then early 2000s rolls around. He did Punch Drunk Love, and that was one that people had a really hard time with. They were like, I was expecting this to be really funny, but it's a movie about Adam Sandler like cheating on his wife and raising a family, and that's just not what we want out of Adam Sandler. But on the other side of the coin, though, you have people who hated Adam Sandler before. They're going, wow, this is a really great movie, and he's a very talented man when he wants to be. So I think there is a lot of depth to be had from a lot of these comedians, but they just don't get the chance because, much like Steve Carell, they get pigeonholed into certain roles, certain things, certain types of films and gigs.
I mean, we saw with Eddie Murphy, his last performance on Netflix, that was a big hit for him, and also possibly getting a lot of acclaim for that as well. There's so many different comedians out there that when they step outside the box and go to a more serious route, it's been great for them. And Steve Carell is one of those individuals that has that talent. It's just kind of weird when we see these comedians that maybe are hit and miss when it comes to comedies, but when they go to a drama format or when they get serious, for the most part, it seems to work out.
Yeah, I mean, it also makes me wonder, like, how many other untapped gems are there in comedy? You know, it's funny, the comedians that kind of break out into into roles like experimental roles or the ones that nobody really likes that, or they're not mainstream comedians, you know, like what could Seth Rogen do in a serious role? What could Russell Brand is actually a pretty good example too, though. Like he's played parts, you know, where he's been really funny. He's been a drug addict. And then he played something like, what was that movie? Arthur, I think it was, where he, you know, a lot of people didn't like that movie, but I thought it was good. And I thought that he did a great job of like being Russell Brand, and then by the end of the film not being Russell Brand.
Well, I think it was probably because the movie had come out before with Dudley Moore, and this was a remake of it. I think people were associating Dudley Moore's Arthur with that and comparing it, and they didn't compare it favorably to Dudley Moore's Arthur, was pretty much what it came down to. But like you said, when these comedians go outside the box, it's usually with great success. So Steve Carell, I mean, his future is all over the place. He's a very skilled actor, but right now he's stepping into the role of going into and joining the Space Force. So looking forward to seeing what he can do with his comedic talents. I'm hoping he'll return to The Office if they do a remake or actually a reboot or whatever it is they plan to do with The Office coming up down the line, because you know they're going to. NBC Universal's got to go ahead and look into that once again to try and see if they can go ahead and get that restarted. But with Space Force, at least it's a little bit of Steve Carell that we're used to seeing. And with Minions, the Rise of Gru being delayed, it looks like this is going to be the dose of Steve Carell we're going to get for at least a little while. What are your thoughts about joining the Space Force coming up later this month on Netflix? Share us your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com.
You're listening to the Pop Culture Cosmos. If you're tired of sifting through flea markets for rare and unique games, we can help. Retro City Games in Henderson, Nevada, only 5 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, has all your favorite gaming staples, classics, and a wide selection of rare games with new stuff always appearing on our shelves. Come in and chat with Nicole or Doug about your love of games and watch as they help you complete your collection or find your childhood favorite. And don't forget, Retro City Games loves trade-ins. So if you have any Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, Xbox, PlayStation, or even PC games, come in and visit Retro City Games today. Welcome to the new metropolis of gaming, Retro City Games.
Well, my friend, before we head on out, I just want to go ahead and ask you this. Troy Brewer, who runs the Discover Community Network, one of our great outlets as part of our syndication, cannot thank you enough, first off, for playing all of our shows. I want to ask you this. He threw this out there, and we were having a discussion before we went on air about Disney Plus. He was thinking, now get this, limiting, let's say Black Widow comes out, but limiting the number of weeks that Black Widow would be out in theaters, and going ahead and after that, straight after a 3 or 4 week run, straight to Disney Plus, raising the price, of course, of Disney Plus to compensate for all these newer releases going to that outlet. So I'm wondering, would you pay $25 or $20 a month, but in return you would be getting content faster from the big screen to Disney Plus?
Okay, see, that's an interesting question. You know, I mean, and no doubt there would be pushback from the Edwards and the AMCs and things like that. But here's my thought on that. And this is instantly what I thought about the moment you said that is that I would, with that in mind, I wouldn't mind paying it for certain months. So Disney Plus would go, if that were the case, Disney Plus would go from something that I am constantly subscribed to something I would only subscribe to when there were things I wanted to watch. I look at it this way, like $25 is a lot of money. And if I'm paying this extra amount of money for these movies, why am I paying $25 a month for these months when there are no movies out? I would go back to it, like say if I want to watch Mulan or I want to watch Black Widow or any of these other, you know, the Disney Plus Marvel shows or Mandalorian. Yeah, I could see myself paying that money to watch those shows, but when I was done with them, I would probably cancel it until there was something else I wanted to watch, just because $25 is a pretty hefty amount of money.
Going to $25, even $20 a month is a big jump for them, and you're going to have to justify that with a lot of fresh content on there. And you know that would mean a new movie from the theaters would have to go there every 3 to 4 weeks, which means that you would have a movie come out like The Jungle Cruise when it comes out next year. That's a movie that's been delayed with The Rock and Emily Blunt. that movie would have to only be out in theaters maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then you would have to right there on Disney Plus, and then you would have to have something come up in 3 to 4 more weeks and pop that on there. So that to me is going to be very tough, even for a company like Disney, which we were complaining this time last year of oversaturating the cinema market. We would be complaining about that last year, but this year, and in that type of context, maybe it wouldn't be so bad.
Well, look at it this way, too. I mean, I don't know how the economics of that would work, but I feel like, with a company like Universal, right, putting Trolls World Tour out, like a Trolls World Tour would probably is a movie that would make anywhere in the range from 100 million to 300 or 400 million, right? Just on a normal release. Would having that for Disney, doing the Disney Plus for $25, even with that increased price tag, would that compensate for the possible 800 million to over $1 billion that certain films could make? Do you think that would level that price out?
I don't know. That's just a hard pill to swallow at $20 to $25 a month. That would become your only source of viewing for most people out there. I mean, Netflix, you would probably have to say goodbye to, because you could, a lot of people spending the money on Netflix and Disney Plus. If Disney Plus was $25, Netflix would try to do something to compensate that. So you would see them go up to maybe $15 to $20 a month as well. And then if you wanted to go to HBO Max and deal with that, and they try to do the same thing with all the Universal movies. So the Fast and Furious would immediately go to their service about 3 or 4 weeks in out of the theaters. That to me is a tough call. And you're right. The theaters chains out there, especially overseas, and even in this country, like you see with AMC and Regal doing right now with, moaning and groaning at Universal, which you and I both know, once this climate becomes healthy again for movie viewing, it's going to be all water under the bridge, and they're all going to start loving each other again, especially around the time the Fast and Furious comes around, because they're not going to pass that kind of money up. It's just that it's going to be hard to walk away from that money at the box office once the movie theaters get healthy again and people start actually going to the theaters worldwide. It's going to be really hard for studios such as Disney and Universal to give up that front line first run money. And even though I think it's a great idea that Troy Brewer proposes, that may be something down the line that Disney would consider. I just don't think we're ready, even in the middle of a pandemic, to go to it yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess Universal's handling of this whole situation with Edwards and AMC could possibly set the precedent for something like that. Could, just seeing how that works out could maybe inspire a model like that in the eyes of other people. But, you had mentioned Netflix, and that's a good point. I feel like I get more quality content from Netflix than I do from Disney Plus. So that being said, there would have to be a lot of big films being released constantly in order to justify that price tag.
And do you think this would lead to, and this is something that he and I were also alluding to, is the fact that Hulu, because it carries stuff all over the place, from young to older audiences to stuff that Disney and its family-friendly ideal with Disney Plus doesn't carry. Do you think that eventually Disney Plus would probably have to say, you know what, we're going to cut Hulu, transfer all that stuff here just to justify that even more, along with the fresh new content that would be coming from a type of box office early returns and an early exit from the theaters into Disney Plus in order to justify a $20 to $25 a month price tag at this point in time? I would have to really think that the Hulu stuff would have to all move over as well for me to go ahead and justify it.
Yeah, and I think Hulu also would have to really up their content as well, because I know Hulu's kind of been the...
Well, I would think they would get rid of Hulu, personally.
You think so? Because, I mean, Hulu's kind of been the docking place for all the Fox properties that Disney now owns, with the exception of, like, Home Alone and some of the other, like, kid movies. But, it'd be smart on them to also be putting, like, put all the Fox Searchlight pictures on there, put the X-Men movies, like, all the big Fox titles, put them on Hulu. Give people a reason, if they were increasing that content as well, then maybe I would think about $25 more as opposed to just getting Disney stuff.
I mean, we've seen with The Princess Bride coming to Disney Plus recently and some other things that they're slowly migrating over there, or at least testing the waters on. I just think in order to justify that price, you need something a little bit more than going ahead and saying, okay, Black Widow after 3 or 4 weeks release is going to go there, or this latest Disney film is going to go to Disney Plus in order to justify the $25 a month that you're asking for. It's close. I would need more Hulu content. And let's put it this way. Hulu, anyways, is in the time that it's been around, it's only still around 25 million viewers, as opposed to Disney Plus in the short time that it's been around and the focus that Disney has paid attention to on it has gotten to 50. So you've gotten that point in time where Hulu has had its opportunity and already Disney Plus has passed it by. I think in order to go ahead and justify that price and get a lot more content, which is something you and I have already said Disney Plus sorely needs, Disney may need to go ahead and say, you know what, we're going to have to eschew the idea of a family-friendly only type format and carry pretty much everything that we've got in stock to just go ahead and justify the amount of content that you need to maintain a $25 a month status for the entire year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The Mandalorian already kind of pushes that envelope a little bit in terms of, the violence in it. So, I mean, yeah, I completely agree. Disney would have to stop. They'd have to tote outside of their politically correct and family friendly narrative and kind of branch out a little bit. And they would have to put Fox properties up there, Independence Day, X-Men, things like that. They'd have to really give enough content to make that worth people's money.
Even all the Stephen King stuff that they have, that would have to go over there as well. I mean, it just, to me, would make more sense at some point in time down the line if you really want to go ahead and justify that price tag, not only include early releases from the theaters, but also as well include all the Hulu content, fold Hulu up, and just go ahead and make Disney Plus a complete experience comparable to Netflix. Because if they have the power of Hulu and Disney Plus within that confines, plus you're getting early releases from Disney movies, that would, to me, would be an ultimate experience.
Yep, I agree. That might be a little bit more worth the $25 a month.
Well, what do you think out there about this concept that our good friend Troy Brewer has thought of from the Discovery Community Network about if Disney Plus went to that extreme price point, it delivering early run releases of films after 3 or 4 weeks out of theaters into Disney Plus, and then also getting Hulu involved in combining all that Hulu content as well. Share us your thoughts on a rebranded Disney Plus and the possibility it could happen. Share us your thoughts on that, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanica Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Well, my friend, it's been a great episode. I cannot thank you enough for hanging around with me for an hour on today's show. Coming up on the Monday show, as Josh and I are going to be talking about something that's very interesting to him, and that's the first look at some Xbox Series X games coming up at the Inside Xbox May 2020 stream. Any last thoughts on the way out, my friend?
Yeah, speaking of controversy, so I just finished that part in Final Fantasy VII last night where Cloud gets dressed up like a woman. I actually handled it pretty well, though it kind of removes you from the game a little bit because there's a little mini dance game you got to do to win. It would have been offensive according to 2020 standards, and they handled it well. And, I just want to say, I guess, kudos on that, but also, it was a very weird scene to play.
But you're a very weird guy, so I guess it fits.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I do like rhythm games, so I guess the dancing part wasn't that bad.
There you go. DDR all the way. Final Fantasy VII Remake has been a great entry for this year in video games. In a time of pandemic, it comes as quite a relief for those who are just trying to go ahead and find an escape. And the Final Fantasy VII Remake has done that for a lot of gamers. So kudos, like you said, to Square Enix on doing something that the fans have been clamoring for quite a long time. And it's paid off, and paid off very well. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day right here in the PCC Multiverse. Thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great